So do you, with college students, do they typically come into college already on the path toward addiction, or do they become addicted to something in college? What's the typical?
I'll just answer that from my perspective pretty briefly. I mean, it's all over the board.
Okay.
It really is all over the board. However, typically speaking, statistically speaking, if you're going to develop the disease of addiction, like many of them, like I think it's like 90%. I'm pulling this out of like a presentation I did like 5 years ago, so I'm not sure if that's, but like 90% of people start before the age of 18, right? So that doesn't mean that they have the disease of addiction at 16. That just means that pathway has started. And so typically, in my experience, when someone can be diagnosed with the disease of addiction, it's more in the college or after, but the path started. Your brain gets arrested. So they say that, hey, if you started using at 15, that's when your brain started to get hijacked. And that's where that brain structure started changing. And so, typically you're starting, you're experimenting at least before the age of 18.
One of the things that I was thinking about as Adam was talking, I know that we've all heard the saying like the gateway drug is weed, but I personally believe in, that trauma is actually the gateway drug, or just that gateway into the disease of addiction. So whether it be something that happened when a person was 5 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, 20 years old, you just don't know, but some type of traumatic experience that everyone deals with trauma even in a different way, and most of the time when something big and traumatic happens, we try to put that to the back of our mind and we try to forget that, or we try to numb it out. And so for some people, and especially a person who might have that disease of addiction, it's just a numbing way, a way to try to forget it, a way to try to I just really think that trauma is the gateway drug. We always hear, even I say, I started out smoking weed, but I started out smoking weed because I was trying to numb something, because I was trying to hide something. And so that might have been the softer, lighter drug, but I started smoking weed because of a traumatic experience that happened to me when I was younger, so yeah.
Best thing that's been said. That's the best thing that's been said. Yeah, it's trauma. That's why teaching emotional intelligence is so important for us as parents. Doing TBR training, which is a parenting style that deals with connection and attachment and trauma. Churches being emotionally healthy. And these, counseling, all these things, because that's it. Like, and trauma, when we think about trauma, sometimes we think about just the terrible, and it is, but it's not necessarily that. There's a lot of things that cause someone to develop the way they develop and need to escape and numb. So yeah, that's the best thing that's been said, in my opinion.
And I like what you said. Trauma can look different for everyone. It could be some really big event that happened, but for someone, just a motorcycle running past here very, very loud, that can be traumatic for them. And we can't say what is traumatic for another person. So, it's deep.
Is it fair to say, just listening to the two of you talk, that for many people the disease of addiction kind of is a coping mechanism to manage their life that then became unmanageable?
Yeah, I think we all have the ability to become addicted. So I think it's like the way I've always thought about it is everybody has that trigger. So yeah, I mean, at some point you're using something to help manage yourself and manage whatever's going on around you or in you. But eventually, for a substance, that is, we all have that trigger point. And so everybody's tolerance is at different levels, right? So it might take me longer to hit that trigger than others, but we all have that ability to hit that trigger.
And one more question before we move on to some other aspects of this. But are people, is the disease of addiction for a person usually specific to one or two substances, or is it just with any type of substance they could have become addicted? Does that make sense?
I think a person can become addicted across the board to. Is that what you're asking? Like,
Yeah, 'cause I mean, sometimes we think like,
is it just one or two drugs that a person can become
yeah, in
addicted
the sense that we
to?
might say someone who struggles with alcoholism, that's what's going to trigger the addiction is alcoholism. But then we kind of, we don't think about all the, where marijuana or something could be also something. So I just kind of wonder, it's a naive question in many ways, that like, is addiction often specific to one drug or one substance rather than to a
I think it can be 2, 3, 4, 5, everything under the sun. Like I, told you earlier, like because I can be triggered to, easily go back to heroin. I'm addicted to drugs and alcohol. At the end of my run, at the end of my active addiction, I just mentioned heroin, but I was using whatever made me feel different. And it was like if it was an upper, if it was a downer, I used it just because it made me feel different. And I forget, they had a name for it back home, but I forget what it was. But a person can use like 3 or 4 drugs it was some kind of, I forget whatever they called it, but anyway, a person can be addicted to. It's a fly that I need to beat up. Hold on. Okay. Sorry. But a person can be addicted to multiple drugs at once. And it's not one. I think that any of the drugs can lead back to using any of the drugs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good.
You can't edit this, right? We can edit this right now.
Get all of us swatting the fly.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to keep talking, but okay.
There's several more topics. I know we're kind of starting to get crunched for time, but one thing that, and I hope this makes sense, but how does God and spirituality play into a person's journey? So, I mean, I know it's often a part of the recovery, but even, I guess right now I'm interested in, how does it play a part of the actual kind of in the midst of the darkness, a person's relationship with God, faith, whatnot? Does that make sense? Spiritual formation in the midst of that.
You look just like Michael Waldrop when he did this, by the way. Like now I'm seeing like Michael
I trained him. Yeah. But he would never drink coffee, though. I could never get him to drink coffee. Yeah. Everything good about Michael he got from me. Yeah.
Good. Well, at least you're humble.
Yeah.
So speaking of humble, though, it's like we do this song every Wednesday, the I Surrender song. And it's an opportunity for us to come to the throne of God and surrender our lives over to God. Like Jasmine said, like our lives have become unmanageable, and we recognize that, and we go, hey, there is a God, we are not Him, and we surrender everything over to God. So the position of disciples of Jesus, that's everyone's position. That's what we have a saying to say we're all in recovery from something, right? So like we're all having to surrender over our lives to God and put things at His throne and give Him things and try to let go of control. So of course you have that theological space that helps drive recovery processes, whatever it might be. But I'll speak to the power of God's people. We have a saying at our church that love first. That's kind of our tagline. That we love because God first loved us. He loved us before we even knew we needed to be loved. And we had a speaker. I can't remember the speaker's name. It was a few years ago. Jasmine, you brought the speaker in, so maybe you can remember. But he talked about how important connection is to the recovery process. And he said, as a church, that's how you help. But you continue to provide connection to people who are struggling. Because what connection does to the brain, the healing properties of connection, the way that can fill what a substance was filling. Connecting to each other, connecting to our God, like that's what God's people can do. So when I think about just that aspect of it, as Christians, as disciples of Jesus, like you have a campus ministry, having a campus ministry that say, hey, we're not going to shun this, we're not going to try to divide it, we're not going to shame, we're going to keep loving you, and they might not come to their senses right away, right? They might, but I guarantee you, they're going to come back to the people who they feel loved and cared about when they do, right? Like I said, that prodigal son. Mm-hmm. So to me, the power of God working through God's people to help people in the recovery process is so key to what's happening here.
Yeah.
Don, our minister, will tell you that the recovery community has changed the DNA of our church. And there's so many reasons why that is, but watch the recovery community help, as we love on the recovery community, watch the recovery community help us start being more authentic, more honest, being able to reveal our own stuff. We just had a testimony from a guy who said, I started volunteering in the ministry because I got to share all of my junk and all of my sin, and they just were like, we love you, like we're with you. And he's like, this is where I need to be. I need to be in the recovery ministry. And he wasn't addicted to drugs or alcohol. It was something much different for him. So to me, that's the theology of surrender, but also the power of God working through his people for the recovery process is key.
Mine would go to that surrender as well. I told you, I knew God my whole life. I knew of God, raised in the church and everything like that. But, I had become ashamed, and I was afraid to talk to God because I felt like I had just sinned so much because I knew what was right, but I did the opposite. But and then also, for so long in my addiction, I tried to be in control and I tried to play God. But when you really come to surrender, it's like you try every way that you possibly can. You try to do it this way, you try to do it that way. And we have this picture that we put up right after that song that we played. But it's like, imagine, a really big ocean where there's nothing but water. You can't see anything but water. And then there's this hand, and it's this person that looks like they're drowning, and all you see is this and their hand going up and like reaching up. Say, God, I've tried it every other way, but now I'm drowning and I need your help. So full, total surrender to God. Not just this part of me, God, that I think that I can give you and I'll let you handle, but no, all of me, God, help me. And in this surrender, I admit that I need help. I admit that you are God, like he said, and I am not. And I admit that I need your help, God, something greater than me and also something greater than the disease of addiction or whatever. And so it's like God loved me enough. There is nothing, because I, suffered with drug and alcohol, substance abuse or whatever, he still loves me. He still loves me. His love for me never changed. And it's like he welcomed me back with open arms and say, okay, daughter, I'll help you. I want to help you. He just needs us to admit and to turn our will and to turn our lives over to him and then let him do what he does best or whatever. But that surrender and true, total, complete surrender is huge. It's like very huge, and it's not easy. It's easier said than done, because you can say, okay, I surrender this over to you, God. But then like 2 days later, something might come up, and I'll be like, you know what? Okay, I can. But then I have to keep reminding myself over and over again, like, no, I surrender. I let go. And I give you control. And so then I might have to ask God, help me. I want to do this way. But no, I want you to live through me. I want you to help me. Show me the direction I need to go. Help me, oh God. So
this is why discipleship to me is so important. Because I think about from the prevention side of it, how important good theology is, because theology drives practice, right? And how important is that as we disciple these things into each other, like to disciple the idea that we're unashamed. Romans 1:16, unashamed to be, right? Unashamed to admit that we need the power of God that saves, right? To say, I need God. Yeah. Like, to be able to say that, that's not like, hey, I'm unashamed to say I need God, like a boastful thing. It's like, hey, like, I'm broken. I'm like, I need God. Yes. To disciple that into each other at a young age, to say, hey, it's like, okay, we're all going to fall short of the glory of God. Yeah. And so you don't have to be ashamed. Why would we need the cross if it wasn't for? I mean, it's like, what are we all about? If like, and so to be discipling into each other, the fact that nothing can separate us from the love of God. And pursuing holiness absolutely is part of discipleship, 100%, but not out of a works-based mindset, but out of a relationship. When you're in a relationship, like I don't clean the room so my wife will stay married to me. I clean the room because I'm married to my wife, and so to be discipling what it looks like to be in a relationship with each other and our God. I just think about how preventative that could be for people. So when they start feeling the shame, they start struggling with things, that they can open up quicker, and our churches will be ready to receive them quicker because we've discipled this into each other. And so I could go on my soapbox, so I won't. But I'm just saying, like, when you're speaking, like, this is why we disciple. This is why we should be discipling each other, because we're all discipling people, right?
Well,
we all are. But what kind of disciple are we making?
Right. And what's powerful about what you are saying is that I can see that there would be a tendency in churches and ministries for the recovery ministry to be something other than the typical work of the church, right? But the way you're framing it is it's under the general umbrella of what's called for every Christian to surrender, every Christian to recognize their helplessness.
He preached a message a few years back to our entire church. Something that we do, we pass out, this is our recovery room right here, but the room that we have our recovery meetings in. But something that we do every week is we pass out one-day chips, surrender chips. And this is like, so a person who suffers from a substance abuse disorder might come up and say, I surrender and I need help. Or it can be a situation. Like it can be, like we say we're a church that everybody's in recovery from something. So yes, and that's one of the things that I really loved about this church, and really I just fell in love with this church, is because I didn't feel like an outcast, like I am a person in, recovery, and I come here in a treatment program, but people accepted me and loved me because it would be like we're all in recovery from something. Yeah, yours is this, but then mine might be this. It could be gluttony. It can be control. It can be anger. It can be whatever. So everybody is recovering from something. And then when it comes from that, you help that person feel even just more comfortable, and just more loved and more accepted. Because if a person feels like an outcast, or if they feel like that someone is looking down on them or something, it's gonna, that trust level and just that comfort level is gonna be.
We had 500, 600 people pick up a chip that
Yeah. I'm talking about from our whole church, from older people to younger people. And you didn't know what people were coming up there for, but it was like the most powerful. I think we might have almost ran out of chips or something like that. Wow. Yeah, it was really good.
Well, so for a ministry like ours, campus ministry, if I'm hearing what you guys are saying, like one of the ways that we can be create a place that's more open and more welcoming and more helpful and supportive is for us to I like how you said it, we're all in recovery from something. So for us to not just recognize that, but verbalize that a lot more. And what else can a ministry or individual Christian, and I do want to come back and ask you some questions about walking as like a friend of someone who's in the disease of addiction, but since y'all start talking about your church, just as a ministry or a community of faith, what can we do to better support and help people who are journeying with the disease of addiction? So y'all mentioned those things.
Well, first thing, if I were you, I would get connected with recovery programs in your area, and therapists and people who can help inform you. So that's and get connected, and let the recovery community help inform you. So have the recovery community come in, and recovery experts and therapists go, hey, here's what you can do, and here's how that could look. So that's the best thing, because they're going to be able to help give you a kind of a blueprint for what it looks like. But general things, being a safe place of connection, doing what you just said, that would be great. Have an atmosphere of open confession, right? To be able to confess with each other, pray with each other, be healed, as Scripture would say, right? So to have that, just a natural rhythm in what you guys do, where it's not uncommon, right? To have a place where, hey, it's like, hey, this is something I'm struggling with, and to be met with support, and to be met with grace, and to be met with, ways forward. And so that's why I say getting connected with the recovery community is important, because if you're opening the door, say, hey, we want to hear your stuff, but you're not ready to help support them, you don't want to do that all on your own. Like, that's the one thing that we learned from a church is, like, we don't want to be the sponsors. We can be mentors. We can be spiritual friends, spiritual mentors. But we're going to let people in recovery, and we're going to let the recovery community and experts drive what we do. So that would be the best thing for you to do, is just get connected with your local community, recovery community.
So what are some organizations that help with recovery that might be in different communities?
Well, I mean,
treatment centers.
There's treatment centers in here. There's treatment centers, and I got to believe there's got to be lots of treatment centers in Auburn. I mean, there's AA groups everywhere. You go on the website, and there's open meetings. Mm-hmm. So I've always encouraged church leaders to go to meetings, like go to open meetings, and they'll welcome you in. If it's an open meeting, you tell them why you're there. You're honest why you're there, and that's a great way to start learning recovery language, learning recovery principles. Learning, becoming a friend to in recovery. So, these are steps that you and your leadership can take. So just Google treatment centers in Auburn. You'll find them.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, they're there.
They're there.
100%.
Yeah.
And then they'll even tell you on the website if it's an open meeting. It'll have a OM next to it, or it'll say something.
Right,
so if it's an open meeting, that's a great piece of advice, to just go and sit in a meeting, and then just conversate with people in recovery. Another thing I would say is, sometimes when you're having these meetings, don't just let it be one-sided as to where you have people coming to you and they're just telling you all about their life. Sometimes just start off with you, and your story, and maybe some of the things that you might be struggling with, so that that'll set help them to feel safe. Okay, they are going through something too. So not just, and then you all can support each other through that. Of course, we know that, you're the minister or the, whatever, but sometimes just setting that safe environment sometimes is just by not letting them just feel like they're the bad person, or like they're the outcast, but just trying to just kind of get on their level with them.
And meet them on their turf. So you guys are probably on the Auburn campus.
Right next to it.
Right next to it. But what I'm saying is, do your ministry on the Auburn campus as best you. I don't know how that all works, but to go to them, and meet them on their turf, because as a church, if it's always on our turf, kind of on our comfort level, then we're already in a position of power over them. We're already in a position of discomfort for them. It's no, we need as Christians to be willing to put ourselves in a discomfort, go to their turf and go, hey, we're going to go and be Jesus. That's why theology is so important, right? That we are a sent people. So if we believe we're a sent people, we're not going to expect the people to come to us. We're going to go to them. So go to them on their campus, where they're at, to have these conversations.
And then they just might not even come. Some people, if you just go to them and they see that you're making an intentional effort to come and to talk to them and to care for them, that's oh, he came to see me. Even if it's just hey man, how you doing? And they know who you are, give them a card, and then go back maybe 2 weeks later or a week later, just, hey, sometimes that sticks out to a person. And every time you might not get a person to come to your ministry event, but take the church to them.
So if there's someone who's watching this who's starting to suspect that maybe that they have a problem, what do you recommend them do? Who do they reach out to? How do they go about making it open to others?
There are always meetings, and there are churches, and there are counselors. But I would say, reach out, because I don't know what the situation might be. If they know someone in recovery, or if they felt it was a need that they needed to go to a treatment center, then maybe they can just make the first call. But there are plenty of hotlines. I know here in Georgia, and I'm sure everywhere, if they Google hotlines, and there are peer recovery coaches that can, that they can just talk to and get whatever they're dealing with out. And then I can maybe give a few of those resources to you later, but I'm sure they have them where you are as well. But whether it be a family member, just a trusted source, it's just a trusted source, and say, okay, I have a problem, I need help. But I'm gonna tell you, sometimes that'll happen, but that might not just happen so easy like that. I wish it was that easy, but sometimes it might take a family member or a trusted friend that might have to kind of help them to recognize.
Let's talk about that. So let's say that somebody is beginning to worry that their friend or family member or roommate, whatever, might have a problem. What do you recommend for them? Like, how do you begin broaching that topic? How do you begin to navigate? Are you enabling? How do you not enable and all that? So I know that's a big topic.
Yeah.
What is some?
I think talk to a counselor, talk to someone who can give you some help, because it can be very, very tricky to navigate that. But generally speaking, the parents, when you think about someone who needs help, you got to start thinking about the people who are most influential in their life. They're going to be the ones who are going to be able to remove things. They're going to be able to be the ones who add things. They'll be the ones who are going to be able to help that person start feeling more of the consequences and help that person become more aware that they need help. Friends, of course, can be influenced, but a lot of times friends don't have that kind of influence to be able to help remove some kind of consequences. The best thing that I've seen friends do is, they just call them out in a loving way to say, hey, like I'm seeing, I care about you, I love you, I think you have something that needs to be addressed here. And see, at Auburn, they have a counseling center, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So if you're an Auburn student and your friend, just encourage them to go to the counseling center. As a school counselor myself, it was the most beautiful thing to see the friends bring their friends into the counseling center. So many people got help that way. So I think if you're on the Auburn campus, you just say, hey, I love you. I think there's something here that you should think about talking to someone about. I'll go with you to the counseling center. So that's what I think friends do. I think parents and adults, you have to really navigate where you're enabling and where you're not, and that's very tricky. And so that's where you need to walk alongside someone who can help you with that.
So one thing that comes up sometimes with students who begin to worry that a friend has a problem, that they're close to this person, they've seen them at their worst, and that person has talked to them about their problems. And you can see how there becomes to be an issue of, am I breaking trust? Am I breaking confidence? To then go and talk to me or a counselor, or even go to the person's parents. So how do you navigate that? If you begin to see somebody on a very destructive path and they are in denial, or they're not taking the steps that they maybe are saying they're going to take, do y'all still feel bound, like, I'm not going to go talk to, a minister about it? I'm not going to go talk to their parents about it? Because in some cases, these are 18-year-olds, so.
Depending on what I see, if it seems like, the person could harm themselves and it's just really gotten to a very, very bad point in their lives, because I love them, regardless of our friendship, because I love them, and I want to be a friend to them, I will mention it to their family or see ways. I won't just watch it, because to me, the disease of addiction is life or death. And so there's been so many overdoses and so many people dying. I'm not going to sit back and watch a person kill themselves or slowly kill themselves or whatever. So if I see that it's getting to that point, because I love you so much, I'm going to talk to your parents. I'm going to, his wife, Susan, said something about, this is going to touch on something that you were talking about with enabling, but I'm going to help that person to get the help that they need. I'm not going to just, and it's like raising the bottom, you hear that saying, oh, we'll just wait till that person hit rock bottom. No, because every rock bottom is different, but what if that rock bottom is death? So I'm not going to just wait until a person dies and say, oh, well, I would have, could have, should have, because it's too late. But, sometimes you just have to do it, and it's a love thing. It's not like I'm not your friend thing or whatever. No, it's because I love you. I'm going to try to help you get help. And then say on the other side of this, that person, they might get upset with you in that moment. But that's okay. But you have to be ready, just have some thick skin and be ready to just accept that and deal with that. But then once they get through and get the help that they need, then they'll say, thank you for saving my life. You know what I'm saying? That's what I look at it as, life and death.
So like if you're seeing a friend with a problem, that whether it's drinking and driving and you get concerns about that, or just a destructive spiral, that you have to, you said thick skin, but just be willing and understanding that they might get mad at you, but you do need to start talking to people. You do need to reach out to their family to protect them because it is life and death.
Yes.
I mean, that's best case scenario for sure. I would just encourage that student, they don't have to do that alone, right? So go to a counselor first. You don't have to break confidentiality, talk to a counselor and go, hey, here's my friend, how can I best talk to them about it?
That's good.
Right? So they don't have to do it by themselves. And then the other thing I would just say this is I would want to release you from any guilt or shame if that goes bad. You know, if you do it and it just all goes bad and it ends like you did your best. And I would also want to release people from guilt or shame if they didn't say anything and the person did die. Like at the end of the day, if that's not their fault, right? And so yes, best case scenario they would absolutely intervene, and I would hope and pray that they would. But let's release them from blaming themselves if they don't.
So as we close, is there anything that you would want to say to a ministry or to individuals, anything you want them to know better, anything that we haven't covered that you think Christians or churches might be prone to do that they shouldn't, or that they should do and they'd be prone not to do it? Anything you want to share? We've covered a lot.
Well, I'll go first, then I want to throw no matter what over to you.
Yes. Oh, that's right. I'm going to ask you that.
And let you end. So to me, recovery ministry is one of the most relevant ministries that a church could be involved with. The disease of addiction numerically is so huge. It affects everybody, every race, every age, every social economic status. And the recovery community is a community that is ready to accept a higher power, is ready to, and so it's a great ministry to be a part of. So I would just say to all churches, any church, say like, this is one of the best ministries you could ever enter into as far as churches go. And then the second thing, I don't want to repeat myself over and over again, but having that culture, discipling in that culture of a church that is open and grace-filled, that is ready to be able to receive the hurt and the broken. Isn't that why Jesus came? Didn't Jesus come for the sick? So I'm not sure what, let's remember. Just to continue to disciple that into us. So whether you have an overt recovery community or not, you have people in your church who struggle with the disease of addiction. That's like, you just do. And if you don't know anybody at your church, you have to ask yourself the question, why do they not feel safe talking about this? What's going on? So whether you have an overt ministry or not, that discipling and changing the culture of your church so people can be open and honest, that to me is really important.
Thank you. All right. So no matter what, you're supposed to...
And anything else.
Anything else. Yeah. I think I'm just going to speak directly to if there's anybody who's watching this who might be suffering with the disease of addiction and, don't know which way to turn and wants a better way. You might be scared. You might be lonely. You might be angry, you might be hurt, you might be ashamed, you might be guilty or whatever. But I just want you to know that there is a better way for you, that there is a better way. It does get better. It doesn't stay like this. So I want to encourage you to reach out for help. Find someone to talk to, whether it be a family member, a counselor, because Jesus loves you no matter what. It's nothing that you have done, absolutely nothing that you have done or could do that would change his love for you. He loves you so very much. He's welcoming you with open arms. You are forgiven no matter what. You are accepted in the body of Christ no matter what. And guess what? It can get better, and recovery is possible for you. No matter what. Don't give up. Don't give in. Keep moving forward and just know that I love you. I haven't even met you, but I love you no matter what. All right. God bless.
All right. Thank y'all. Any resources that you'd point people to, websites, videos, podcasts, books, something? Just if you've got anything, and then we'll be done.
I would, as far as the Bible is the number one book. Go to the book. That's the big book. All right. But then also,
we're going to start reading that this year.
For someone brand new in recovery, I would recommend the 12 and 12. It's 12 steps, 12 traditions, and it just it breaks down, and if you want to go that route, it breaks down the 12 steps and the 12 traditions of an anonymous program. But I just love it and I live by it.
Awesome. What about, do you know of a resource that would help people see kind of inside the life of someone struggling with substance abuse? Does that make sense?
No.
Like it doesn't make sense?
Oh, a documentary?
Like a documentary or a movie that you think portrays it really well.
Oh, I don't know. Do you know? Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I've seen them, but
Well,
I
we'll
can't.
end on Adam not having an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
don't know what I'm talking about.
if we think of something like say in the next day or two, maybe we could just
Yeah,
send
we'll
it
put
and
it
you
in,
can
we'll
roll
put
it
it in the
across
show
the
notes.
bottom.
Yeah, I'll have my
You ever
staff
seen
do
the
that.
show Antoine Fisher?
Yes.
The movie Antoine
Yeah.
Fisher. That's more than just talking about addiction. That talks about trauma and all that kind of stuff. But I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Well, if we find it, we'll send it out. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for sharing such powerful
Hey, thank you. man.
wisdom and sharing your stories. And
Thank you for having us.
yeah.